Well, a very special guest today on Absolutely Famous is a legend of rugby league, a legend of New Zealand, in fact, one of the most respected figures in sport, both sides of the Tasman, I think. Sir Graham Lowe, thanks so much for coming on Absolutely Famous. It's good to see you looking so well.
Thanks very much for the invite. It's nice to talk to you, John.
Yeah. So Graham, you've had an amazing life. You've dodged a few health bullets in your time, but as you say, you're into your 70s now and as busy as ever.
Yeah, I have, like many of us along the way, we get these health challenges. Mine were particularly serious, and they happened. Well, they started happening at a great time in my life, really, because it was when I don't think I'd even got to the peak of when I was coaching. I was coaching actually at the time, Manly in Sydney, and also Queensland in the Origin, and I was struck down with these health issues, and fortunately, well, they were life threatening. There was a number of them happened over a period of time, but fortunately, I got through them, with little damage from them, or permanent damage from them, and I've still got to be pretty careful now. I'm 75 now, and I've actually got a little coronary procedure coming up again in September, so it's a little bit of maintenance every now and then that needs to be done, but by and large, I'm pretty good.
I'm really pleased to hear it. And you're doing some amazing work with young people in the Auckland or New Zealand region. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've done there? And
I've sort of got, I mean, the coaching fire, when you've been a coach, the coaching fire never ever goes out. And so what I did is I actually initially did it as part of the recuperation from when I had the brain hemorrhage. I had a brain hemorrhage, lost all my memory. Things were really grim there for a while. But as part of that recovery, basically a couple of years later, a few years later, I've always believed that sport in itself has a language in it that's really special, and if managed properly and harnessed properly and put into the right concept, it can help with learning and education. So what I did is I have 12 principles that were based around the coaching philosophy that I'd always had. I didn't actually know I had those principles till after I retired, and I was in the recuperation mode from the trauma of the brain injury. But so what happens now, to cut it short, what happens now is these 12 principles I have, the polytechs here, they're like TAFE colleges in Australia. They license to us for this. The program is called Kick for the Seagulls, which includes the 12 principles. They get their tutors to weave NCA level 2 literacy and numeracy, which is the core base literacy and numeracy levels here in New Zealand. It's very similar in Australia. They've come under another name, but they get they weave the literacy and numeracy through these, and so we started off by delivering them, and we use the language of sport. We use the language of sport, and unashamedly, hook it as the engagement tool, because like Australia, there's a lot of young people here who are slipping through the cracks of education, and far too many of them are not getting also the right messaging at home, and so they get a little bit lost, in their early teens, and even before at times. But in their early teens is where we started looking at it, and we've run these courses with just incredible success. So much so that the government approached me to see if I could design something that would work in prisons. So now we're basically in all the prison sites right throughout New Zealand, delivering, or the polytechs, the TAFE colleges, their tutors, they deliver these programs, which are level 2 literacy and numeracy, and the success rate that we have has just been absolutely remarkable. It couldn't be any better than what it is. In actual fact, since we rebranded the system, which was in the end of 2017, we've now had 660 men graduate NCA level 2 for literacy and numeracy, which in itself is quite remarkable when you consider that many of them were not even even able to read or write properly when they started.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal, Lowe. I mean, it's amazing what you can do, isn't it, when you tap into someone's motivation. I think you, reading your story about when you left school at 15, I was pretty much the same as you. I didn't get a lot out of school, but once I found something that I had a passion for, away I went.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate in that in many ways coaching helped me dramatically, because when I first coached, I thought to myself, how do you do it? What do you do? Because you don't get an apprenticeship. You're normally a volunteer coach or a community coach. You've played for the local club, or you've helped out somewhere, or you've had some connection or with a school or whatever. So they ask you if you will come along and coach whatever team it might be. And really, it's a massive responsibility to be a community coach. I just admire them. We're in the process of now. We've just about completed it. We're designing a new little tool for community coaches. It's going to be worldwide when we do this thing, and it's just a little tool because I think community coaches not only can coach and help young people in whatever sport it might be, but in the palm of their hand every Tuesday and Thursday, these community coaches have these young minds in which they can also push through some very important social messaging to help them as they grow into adults, and to help them in later life. So we're designing something to go to along those lines that is very, very close to going live. And it's going to be in an e-learning type base. So it's fantastic, but you never know what you're going to do, and you shouldn't underestimate sport. Sport is such a powerful tool to help deliver good social messaging that can help us all and help our countries grow, and ensure that we play a good part in society where sometimes in other cases, without the benefit of sport or the language of sport or the experience of sport, we miss out.
Well, of course, sport, like you, I've been involved with sport all my life, just at a humble club level, but it mirrors life in lots of ways, doesn't it?
It does. And sport, sport is a good learning tool for us, because it shows us how to celebrate success, enjoy and celebrate success. It shows us how to cope with when things don't go right, but it also makes it very clear there's always two sides. One side is going to win, and the other side is going to lose. And the side that loses, that doesn't mean to say they're losers. They've just lost the game. That's all. I think the points on the scoreboard at the end of the game are quite insignificant in the big picture. The most important thing that you learn from sport is the values that go with it, the being persistent, the pride, the humility, the commitment, and all those things, the teamwork, all those things are very, very valuable tools for us as we grow into adults. And I think that they're the hard parts to actually achieve. Getting more points on the scoreboard at the end of the game, I personally think that's the easy part. And I mean, we can even see it in the NRL now. You can tell some clubs in the NRL, they're going too much for the points on the board, and they're leaving behind actually what the club means. And I think it's a detriment.
Well, of course, we've got something a lot about inside knowledge, State of Origin coming up. The Aussies, well, I'm very excited about it too. I love it. You were the only, and still are the only person outside non-Australian to coach in the State of Origin. You coached Queensland to a great series win there. What's it like? What was it like? What was the experience like for you, especially as an outsider, so to speak?
I think it was. Well, it was. I'm just every time I even I don't talk about it very often to tell the truth, but when I do, that my heart just swells with pride, because I was so proud of being given that opportunity. The privilege that I had was very rare, and it may be a long time if ever it happen again. But where I was lucky, I was at the very first State of Origin in 1980. And in 1980, I coached Norths in Brisbane. We won the premiership up there then. In those days, there used to be 2 infield cups. There was one in Sydney and one in Brisbane. And in 1980, North won the North Devils. We won it up there. But during that year was when they had the first state of origin. And so we all went along to that game. And, I could see from that moment, as many others could as well, but I knew deep in my heart this was really where the soul and the absolute pinnacle of our game was. And even in those, humble's not the word, but pretty modest as compared to now. That modest evening there at Lang Park, even though the excitement that was generated was as good as what you'll see in this series, but the excitement in there, I could see in my mind immediately. I could, because I've always been somebody who looks at the big picture, but I could immediately see in my mind what was going to happen here. And I knew there was a lot of doubters, particularly, from down south, but and the media down south always doubted it. And in many ways still do now. All you've got to do is watch, some of the shows and they forget there's actually 2 teams there. But, I could immediately see what a great concept this was and where it could head. So I just love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And of course, you know what the hype's like over here. It's fever pitch already a week or so out from the first game. Billy Slater, rookie coach, taking over the Origin team. What did you think of that? I mean, the guy's certainly passionate about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a pretty good move because, I'm not sure if Billy's coached at any level. So that in itself says something. But, with Origin, you've got the best players in the game. You've got the best players that they know. And the main thing you have to do is make sure they're in the right frame of mind and make sure they've got a simple plan. Make sure they understand the opposition, they respect the opposition's plan. But your plan is just simple, but it makes allowance for the brilliance that you have in your team. Because that's what New South Wales, both sides will have a good plan. And it, so you've got that, but the plan is really a safety net. The winning or the losing of it relies on the individual flair or brilliance that somebody might have just to make that and have the confidence to try something on when maybe it wasn't on before. The biggest risk is not to take one, and those sort of on that stage. And if it doesn't come off, it can be catastrophic. But you have to, because the teams are so evenly matched. So it's something that's really, really special. It's hard to describe what it was like.
Obviously, the Queensland players, when you coach them, they warm to you pretty quickly. You're spoken about in legendary status over here when they talk about old Origin games, and that must have been special to you to be accepted like that.
It was such a humbling experience, John. And, I was fortunate in that I knew many of the players from my time coaching the Kiwis because a lot of the players had been playing for Australia. And I had that sort of little bit of a connection there. But I think the most special thing in that first year in particular, in the second year, was that, I can vaguely remember the second year. We lost that one 2-1 because I had so much. I was so unwell that whole year, and even with Manly, I was in hospital half the time. But that first year, even that in the first series, I was in intensive care between the second and third games with the help because by that time my health issues had started. But I was really, really lucky because Wally Lewis was there, and I knew Wally Lewis, and I'd seen him and compete and had my teams compete against him, not only at Norths when I coached up there, but also with the Kiwis. And I thought I knew Wally. I thought I knew how good he was, but it wasn't until I was actually beside him in that environment, getting ready for the game, that it really came through to me what a great and one of only no one will ever be like him ever, and so what a great captain and leader he was. And so I was just blessed I was at that time, because Wally was just absolutely outstanding to work with, and just to know what he was capable of.
He's a legend over here, of course, and he reads the sports news on Channel 9 every night now, so we get to see him every day. But,
Yeah.
so, Graham, all the league triumphs you've had, my favourite one from the Kiwis was the 83 win in Brisbane. I think it had been about 12 years since we'd beaten the Kangaroos, and you beat them 19-12. It was more convincing than that, and I still, get emotional about that.
Yeah, that was a good game. It was a great game, because it had been a long time since Australia was beaten, actually. Because they were invincible in those days. They had a fantastic side, and they were cruising along, and good sides that had come up against them at different times. Australia was basically just waiting for them to make a mistake, and they'd pounce, and you'd pay a heavy price. But now that particular game was a good game, because it had a lot of things in it. It had a lot of tactics that I know Australia put in, but we put in ourselves. We had a plan where we thought we could get the Australians to. We thought we could sell them a little bit of a mislead them a little bit about going one way and end up going the other. It's probably tactically one of the best games I was ever involved in, and it was just a wonderful feeling. It was a wonderful feeling. The interesting thing I remember about the game, though, is not long before that game, I was asked if stress worried me. Did stress worry me as a coach? And I said, no, I don't think so. But I remember sitting on the sideline in that game, and there was only minutes to go. And all of a sudden I heard a bang inside my head, and I thought, geez, I've been shot, something happened. And then I realised I'd been grinding my teeth so hard, one of the back teeth broke, because I'd been grinding my teeth so hard. So
Classic.
That just gave an example of the stress. But no, it was outstanding, that game, and it was one of those games. Everything just came off for us, and when you consider we didn't have Mark Graham in that game, Mark Graham was our best player, so it was fantastic. It was good.
Yeah, it was the start of a great era, because I was living in Christchurch then, and I'd go down to the showgrounds and watch you beat the Poms as well, and you had a really good side, the Sorensen brothers here, and fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think the Sorensen brothers. If I had, it's hard in a team environment. It's hard to isolate, just individuals in a game, in a team performance. But really, Kurt and Dane Sorensen, in that period, they did hold New Zealand together. With their explosive power. I mean, people will now look at this and think it's old people's talk, and it's not old people's talk, but it's not old people's talk at all. But Kurt Sorensen, at his peak, I don't think anyone could contain him now. He was such an explosive player, so powerful. The speed he had for a forward was just incredible. And Dane, his brother, playing in the front row, not a big man at all, but absolutely never made a mistake, absolutely reliable as far as how far he could get with the ball, and also absolutely reliable on how to offload the ball when he had to, absolutely reliable on defence. So those two players, Kurt and Dane Sorensen, I think that they were the glue. I think they were the glue, really, for the Kiwis in that particular era.
You had some brilliant backs too. James Lowe was my favourite. He just seemed to be able to, I don't know how he got through the line half the time. He just ghosted through, and he was brilliant.
Well, what James Lillewai, what all of those guys, well, they bought into a test arena, which is the holiest of arenas, and they bought into that test arena a backyard mentality way to play the game. I mean, I wasn't going to. I tried to encourage it as much as I could, because I felt that, that around about then, or maybe just a little bit earlier, was the time where